The case study of Vanitas, or Vanitas no Karte for annoying people, is amazing. Music, iconic. Animation, incredible. Plots! Really wish I had a timeline or something handy sometimes, but otherwise interesting. The world is so lived in and the characters are fascinating. Easily some of the best shonen writing I've ever seen. And as you probably guessed from the title of this video, today we're talking about my favorite character in the show, good old Vanitas' last name. Vanitas is by far the most interesting character in the show. So interesting, in fact, that the majority of character interactions he has ends up being, oh no, I think I like this guy. Emphasis on the oh no, because he really wants to be an asshole. But behind the mask hides the soul of a truly kind person. And here's how I know that. Welcome to The Many Masks of Vanitas. Vanitas is the conceited carrier of the Book of Vanitas, a mysterious tome passed down to him from the original Blue Moon vampire. He uses the knowledge the book contains to cure vampires of their curses in order to save the vampire race from extinction. In spite of the power he wields, he himself is only human and claims to only do so despite the previous vampire of the Blue Moon, who is said to have hated all vampires and wished for their destruction. On the surface, he is rude and callous. He keeps people at a distance with pointed remarks and an arrogant attitude. But beneath lies a compassionate man who wants to save people from their suffering. Whether that means curing their disease or pulling the trigger himself to save them from themselves, Vanitas will do what needs to be done no matter how much it hurts. Vanitas may be a cunning pragmatist, but he can't do everything by himself. Enter Noe. Noe is Vanitas' first friend. At this point, Vanitas has had many people who he could call family, but he's never had an equal before. What makes their relationship so special is that Noe is the only person that can make Vanitas truly shut up. Reason being that while Vanitas can win most arguments with logic, Noe relies on emotion. He speaks his mind and wears his heart on his sleeve. He listens to Vanitas if he has to, but Noe will literally grind things to a halt if he doesn't agree with what's happening, which is something Vanitas hates but also respects. Noe is also the only person in Vanitas' life who chooses to stay with him no matter how mean or cruel he acts towards him. Noe accepts that is who Vanitas is because he is literally too stubborn to care. And whether Vanitas realizes that or not, he appreciates being able to speak his mind with someone who he can honestly clash with. Noe begins to grow on him when Vanitas realizes he's not all talk. Vanitas never really trusts anyone. He shows that in the way he treats the vampires of the story. No matter how many times Noe tries to get him to open up, Vanitas always pushes him away. But Noe is different. Noe sticks around no matter how much abuse he has to take because he is intrigued by Vanitas' actions rather than his words. He is a human, but he saves vampires. He says he's a doctor, but he murders his patients. He claims he does it for revenge, but he looks so sad when no one is looking. The duality between what he says and what he does is the reason why Noe stays by his side. To study the case, that is Vanitas, some might say. Hey, that's a pretty good title. Someone should use that. But despite all odds, Noe ends up growing fond of Vanitas. He begins to trust him, not because of who Vanitas is, but because of who Noe is. Noe puts his trust in people even if they don't seem to deserve it, because he wants to live in a world where people can understand each other if they just talk things out. That naive, unwavering trust that Noe has is also the driving force behind most of Vanitas' future relationships as well. His faith in his fellow man, or vampires in most cases, leads them to form alliances with even the most unlikely of people. Noe is directly responsible for Vanitas meeting Luca, Janna, and Roland. I mean, who else would take a child hostage and make him watch as you kiss his bodyguard so hard she falls to her knees? That's a true friend. And he was the one who convinced Roland to help with the search for the missing vampires, which prompted Roland to be more tolerant of the monsters he thought he was supposed to hunt. But Noe does have his faults. While Noe is one of the strongest fighters in the show, he prefers finding peaceful solutions, which puts himself and others in danger more often than not, which is where Vanitas comes in. He is always ready to pull the trigger when no one else wants to. The first time Noe sees Vanitas kill a curse bearer, we see just how different these two really are from each other. Vanitas is a doctor. He will try anything he can to save a patient, but he knows better than anyone when it's too late. So, better than let monsters run free, he chooses to kill them before they lose themselves and hurt the people they love. Noe and Vanitas have very similar backstories. They both were confronted with loved ones who were corrupted and turned into monsters. Where the realistic pragmatist Vanitas chose to save his father by killing him before he hurt anyone, the idealistic and naive Noe didn't, which cost him the lives of 3 of his friends and almost his own. Noe spends his life trying to search for a meaning and a salvation that costs you your life, whereas Vanitas has already found his answer. Dying as yourself in a way you choose is all anyone can ask for in the end. Sometimes rude, sometimes kind, but never happy. Vanitas is an enigma to Noe that can never be solved. Noe is the only one in the world willing to try. Noe's stubbornness lets him see Vanitas for who he truly is. He puts up with the insane mood swings and constant pleas for attention, the rude words and death threats, because he knows that deep down, Vanitas is a good person with a strong heart, someone worth calling your friend.
あの日、ラ・バレーヌで出会ったのがシャスールではなく、ヴァンピールの専門医を名乗る男でよかった。もちろん俺は今でもあんたのことを好きじゃありませんが、あんたが今のあんたでいてくれてよかったです。本当に勝手な話ですが、それだけを伝えたかったんです。
Noe is more like a brother than a friend to Vanitas. They have a strong bond and respect for each other's viewpoints. That's not always a good thing. Vanitas often finds himself envious of the things Noe has. Noe is not just kind to others, he's open, honest. He has nothing to hide and keeps the people he loves close to him. The exact opposite of Vanitas. But more importantly, that lets Noe have all the things Vanitas wants. Love, friendship, a sense of belonging. He has Domi, who clearly loves him, and Vanitas wants someone like that as well. When Domi and Noe meet again, it sends Vanitas spiraling. When he meets Janna after that, he almost forces himself onto her. He may not realize it, but he's been starved of love his whole life, so he almost instinctually seeks it out. Janna is the Hellfire Witch, a bureau tasked with protecting the Archduke Luca and Vanitas' first love. Does that justify him assaulting her after she already surrendered and making her boss/little brother watch the whole thing as he's being held hostage by his friend? I guess so. Joking but not really joking aside, Vanitas has that 1950s riz. You know that riz old people be talking about? Back in my day, I didn't take no for an answer. I just kept asking until I found something to blackmail her with, and then she literally couldn't say no. But hey, he has a girlfriend and I don't, so maybe I just don't understand relationships. Vanitas starts off this relationship the same way he hits it off with most people, by being an asshole. But this time it's different, because now he's a sex offender. Vanitas has never been in love before, so when he meets Janna for the first time, it's like a light has been turned on in his head. Whenever he's around her, he acts like he's in control, but he's more like a first grader around the girl he likes. He does whatever he can to get her attention, and the easiest way to do that is to bully her. All up until he hears Domi and Noe and is reminded that there are more intimate ways to express affection. When he discovers Janna is a curse bearer and therefore must drink blood to stop herself from going crazy, two thoughts enter his mind at the same time. First off, he is a doctor. His job is to cure patients. So of course the first one was, I can save her. The other thought was, yes! I want you to imagine you're Janna in this situation. The guy you hate the most in the entire world has just found out your deepest, darkest secret, and is saying he'll help you with your addiction so long as you only do it with him. That is essentially what happened. Horrifying. Or it would be, if it wasn't so frickin' sexy. Vanitas and Janna might have gone off on the wrong foot, but their bond is genuine. He understands her better than anyone because he's going through the same thing. When he says he'll kill her before she loses herself, he's saying the things he wishes someone would say to him. He knows that she's afraid of losing herself, so he's assuring her that even if she does, she won't hurt anyone she loves. Vanitas always seems to know what Janna is thinking, but that's because she has an awful poker face. Despite being a feared soldier who has literally slaughtered hundreds of enemies, the Hellfire Witch is surprisingly wholesome. She, like Vanitas, has never been in love and never thought she would be. Her and Vanitas share many things in common, and the biggest one is that they both feel they don't deserve to be loved.
恋とは一体何ですか？俺も知らん。だがジャンヌを見ていると胸が高鳴ってゾクゾクが止まらなくなる。強いところ、美しいところ、でかいところ、からかいがいがあるところ。あとはそうだ。俺のことを絶対好きにはならなさそうなところか。好きな相手には同じように自分のことも好きになってほしいものなのでは？俺がジャンヌのことを好きでも、ジャンヌは俺のことを好きにならなくていい。俺は俺のことを好きになるようなやつには全く興味がない。
Vanitas and Janna both grew up without parents. Vanitas' mother died in childbirth and his father was killed by vampires, whereas Janna's parents were also killed by vampires, albeit for different reasons. They were both forced to grow up very quickly, which resulted in them becoming jaded adults. But the key difference between them is that while Vanitas has given up on the world, Janna is far from hopeless. Janna still miraculously holds on to her innocence in unexpected ways. She still gets flustered around boys she likes. She still likes to dance. She still wants to enjoy life, in spite of all the restrictions placed on her by her superiors. She still has people she admires and people she wants to protect, in spite of being placed in this birdcage for a crime she didn't even commit. And that is what's so fascinating about her character, especially in contrast to Vanitas, who has been put through largely the same challenges and came out the other side alone and spiteful. Vanitas' story is about learning to trust others, and Janna is the person who makes that journey shine. His love for her begins one-sided, but as he shows her all the sides to himself, not just a self-absorbed asshole or the sex-crazed maniac, Janna begins to see how much he actually cares about his friends. He is inspired by his kindness and eventually falls in love with him as well. The scene that best describes that dynamic is when Vanitas promises to kill her. She feeds off him and confides that she will eventually turn into a monster. He promises her that if he can't cure her, then he would at least be the one to kill her before she loses herself. This scene sets its tone of him being her savior even when she herself doesn't know what would save her. But personally, my favorite scene of theirs is when they are both stuck in a cabin in the woods during a blizzard. Vanitas is sick and Janna takes it upon herself to nurse him back to health. Any means necessary. She seems to forget the relationship they built up until now and enters full medic mode while Vanitas is having a mental breakdown. This scene sticks in my mind because it is easy to forget that Janna is a soldier, one of the strongest in fact. So of course she developed the mindset to put everything aside and just focus on what needs to be done. Whereas while Vanitas is an intelligent doctor, he's also only human and needs to be taken care of, against his will if need be. It flips their dynamic on its head so naturally and gives the moment of her asking him for help later on so much more weight. She sees his weakness, his frailty, and still wants him to save her. He gets it done despite everything in his way because that's who Vanitas is. Kind and dependable. Vanitas realizes that Janna is in love with him too and begins developing stronger feelings for her. So much so that Vanitas thinks she put a curse on him. And the only person Vanitas can confide in is his local priest Roland. And this guy's here too. But mostly Roland. Roland is an interesting character to pair with Vanitas because unlike Noe, Roland is Vanitas' true opposite. Where Vanitas is cold, dark, and brooding, Roland is warm, bright, and happy. He trusts people implicitly and hunts vampires indiscriminately. But maybe not for long. Vanitas is a man of science. Magic? Science. And Roland is a man of faith, but apparently can be swayed under the right circumstances. All good reasons as to why Vanitas doesn't like him, but the biggest reason is because Roland understands Vanitas in a way no one else could. Noe understands Vanitas because he lives with him. He slowly becomes aware of what is important to him over time. Janna begins to understand Vanitas through overexposure. She is closest to him and sees the things he tries to hide from other people. But Roland understands Vanitas because he's seen this all before, time and time again. Roland has a knack for reading people, so even if he doesn't know specifically what makes Vanitas tick, he knows one thing. Vanitas is a good person who has been dealt a bad hand. Roland has been a chasseur for a long time. And in the show, you can't go 2 seconds without someone coming up and telling you their parents were killed by vampires. Even though in the first episode, the general public seems to believe that vampires are extinct and or a myth, so who knows what's going on with that. But Roland is a man who takes care of people like that. He has an energy that makes you want to confide in him, almost like he's a holy man or something. Roland is the ideal priest. He listens to what you have to say, he treats everybody fairly, and you can leave him alone with your kids anyone. Anyway, Roland provides Vanitas with a sounding board, a neutral stance for Vanitas to confide in when he's feeling lost. In a weird way, it's like Roland is proving to Vanitas himself that he cares more about Janna than he's letting on. Vanitas thought he knew what love was, but once he realized that Janna could love him back, that opened an amazing and equally terrifying reality. That someone else could actually care for someone like him. And it's not just Janna either. Vanitas is suddenly surrounded by people who care about him, and on some level that scares him. That fear spills over into the incident that comes next, but we'll get to that. For now, let's get into... The introduction of Mika brought with it many revelations, Vanitas' backstory, the existence of 2 different books of Vanitas, and the identity of the previous vampire of the Blue Moon, Luna. But the things I found interesting were the choices Vanitas made himself. A lot of things happened to him, but in spite of all that, he still chose to be kind even at the cost of his own well-being. The day he met Mika, he was already broken by the doctor. Although he was fully capable of leaving, he chose to stay behind so no other kid would have to suffer the way he had. When Mika called out for help, Vanitas would be there to take on his pain, no matter how much he didn't want to. That is the kind of person that Mika fell in love with, but that isn't the whole story. Because Vanitas' philosophy isn't that no one should suffer, it is that he shouldn't stand by and let other people suffer on his behalf. Noe alludes to this before as well. Vanitas has no problem getting himself hurt, but he hates seeing others in pain. When Mika was screaming out for help, Vanitas saved them not because it was the right thing to do, but because it wouldn't be right to stand there and do nothing. It is an almost irrelevant distinction, but it is that near imperceptible line between altruism and martyrdom that separates Vanitas from other shonen protagonists. Think of it like Tanjiro versus Deku. When Tanjiro sacrifices himself, it is for the betterment of society. He does it because it is the right thing to do. When Deku sacrifices himself, it is because he doesn't value himself, and he feels he has to do it in order to save people. Is it the same result at the end of the day? Sure, but it is the math in between that makes a character interesting in the first place. Unfortunately, Mikhail feeds into the martyrdom that Vanitas has built for himself all too easily. Mikhail had just lost his mother to a vampire, so when Vanitas proved himself to be someone who would protect him, Mikhail stuck with him. Their bond would be forged in fire up until they were separated after Vanitas kills their father. Seemingly on a quest for revenge, Mikhail arrives to force Noe and Vanitas to kill each other. But there is one thing he didn't account for, the new bond that Vanitas and Noe would come to share. These two aren't just friends, they're partners. Not like that. They understand each other better than anyone, still not like that. For the final battle of the anime, we see Vanitas and Noe fighting to the death. Noe must take Vanitas' memory in order to save his best friend Domi. Vanitas made a promise that anyone who would try to take his memories would have to die. As they fight, the concept of freedom is thrown out by Vanitas.
そこをどかんというのなら先にあの女から始末してやろうか。そうすればお前も自由になれる。あの口うるさい女につきまとわれずに済むぞ。
A horrible thing to say to your friend, but let's examine what he means by free. Vanitas spent his whole life surrounded by suffering. His mother died in childbirth, his father was killed by vampires. He joined the chasseurs, but was quickly kidnapped and forced into inhumane experiments. And the worst part is that he tricked himself into thinking that's how it's supposed to be. When he says that Noe can be free from Domi, he's saying that he can be free from suffering. That the act of caring for someone only brings on suffering that he is going to take on. At his core, no matter how kind he is, he just wants to stop caring for others if all that's going to do is bring on more pain. In a way, Mika represents the child Vanitas never got to be. He is callous, unfeeling, and self-centered, but also incredibly lonely. The key difference between them is that Vanitas was allowed to go out into the world and meet people who would challenge him, his idea of salvation, love, friendship, and allow him to grow past his own self-destructive behavior. It is through his relationships with Noe, Janna, and Roland that he is able to face life again, and in so doing, can face death with a smile.
Listen, child. We are all alone. Whether human or vampire, that one fact remains. It's impossible to understand another completely. In fact, many live their entire lives without ever understanding themselves. But because that's true, living things have always sought companions to share in their warmth. My deepest hope for you is that sometime after I have departed this world, you will find refuge in the arms of someone just as we're embracing each other now. In fact, there will be such a one, so long as your heart isn't closed when they appear.
Vanitas suffered alone for years, only finding solace in the fleeting relationships that kept him company in the brief moments between more pain. But only by moving forward through that pain and forging bonds with people around him that could accept him for who he is, did he find people worth living for and dying for. Those bonds are his greatest treasure, and what I love about him. Peace.